Hello everyone, welcome again to another session of Introduction to Business course. Today, I will explain to you about the Introduction to Questionnaire Design number 1. Questionnaires is a tool to measure people's attitude, judgment, and also evaluation. It seems to be simple, but actually, it is like trying to see the bottom of the sea. In this series of video, we will further discuss problems of making questionnaires and also how to avoid pitfalls in making questionnaires. Here are the learning outcomes. At the conclusion of this video, every student is expected to understand 1. How to identify wrong questions in questionnaires, and 2. How to compose correct questionnaires instead of the particular questions. In this particular video, you will understand survey planning problems and also you will understand about the rules of survey. The wrong questions is seen at individual questions, but the root cause could be in the overall designs of the questionnaires. This is the overall goal of this video series. However, this video is just the first part and it only covers the survey planning problems and the rules to be applied by any survey. In this slide, I will explain to you about the types of questions. Number 1. Simple questions. We are sure that you all understand what a simple question is. Number 2. A running prompt. It's actually multiple questions with multiple choices. It looks complicated because it should be packed in a limited space. And then you could easily understand close one choice. Closed, mark all that applies, means that the respondent is free to choose, but multiple response, mark all that applies, means that the respondent should inform all that applies. It looks similar, but the instructions is different. Subsequently, a filter question is a branch to the next relevant set of questions. The last one is open questions, which respondents is free to write. Here are the measurement error, bias and variance. In measuring, we have to avoid bias and accept variance. Variance is a natural because people are different one to another. The problem is to avoid bias because we could come to a wrong conclusion. We think that we managed to aim at a center like the left picture, but unfortunately, it's not the right center. However, sometimes we have to measure the bias. Okay, let's see some examples. In the left side, we can see the bias. Like in the questions, are you in favor of Donald Trump to run for the second term? Or do you think that Cita Citata is innocent? Or the example for Ryan's question is, how far do you live from ITB campus in Bandung? Or have you ever heard Iis Dahlia songs? A question that asks for facts are mostly unbiased and will create variance. However, a question about opinion is actually measuring the bias of the respondents. We call it attitude. What should be avoided is a bias that comes from the researcher. And what is a bias? A bias is prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair. If a researcher wants to prove her or his hunch, then she or he should define it in research hypothesis. This sounds like a word juggling, but it is not. What is the prime danger is unconsciously creating bias. In order to avoid it, the research tool or the questionnaires tool should follow certain requirements that we'll explain later. Here we can see the rules, standardizing, assumptions, and also general guidelines. Basically, this is the researcher job. Number 1 is making a standard research tool so any interviewer could use it. Number 2, take the responsibilities so assumptions are fulfilled. And number 3, following the general guidelines, which is can accepted by all researchers. The first one is standardizing. Each respondent should be exposed to the same question experience, and so is the recording, so that any difference in the answers can be correctly interpreted as reflecting differences between respondents, rather than differences in the process that produced the answer. A bird constructs her nest so it protects the bird family from the environment and predators. The researchers also have to actively develop the standard so it protects the research from biases. The standards look simple. The first, the same question experience. This is a daunting task because it is difficult to standardize the experience. The physical experience is a problem, not to mention the interviewer and the physical environment. Because it is impossible to standardize the physical environment, the researcher should rely on the interviewer. The main objective is to get a record that really reflects the respondent differences rather than the process to produce it. As you can see, this is the assumption. Assumption is like pillars: strong, functioning, strategic, and bold. In order to arrange a good research survey, the researcher should take the action of taking responsibility. The first one is clear: train the interviewer. The second one is to compose the right questions. This is at the planning and the pilot survey stage. The third one denotes the importance of filtering questions, so only competent respondents are interviewed. The fourth means that the respondent should not be forced to answer the questions. The fifth one is about opinions which could be disadvantaging the respondents. Researcher is very responsible for the validity of these 5 assumptions. What is a guidelines? These are the guidelines to make sure that we will not be stranded. What is probing? Probing is a technique used to help ensure that the answers given by a respondent are as accurate and as complete as possible. The most common probe is a silent probe, letting the respondents know that more is expected. The next is asking additional explanation. Interviewer should only show her or his official interviewer ID prepared by the organization. Personal ID is not advisable because the interview is not a personal matter. More further, every interviewer should not give any comment on respondents' opinion. Questionnaires is a research tool. The design depends on the research goal and also the elaboration of the research goal into concepts to be proven. One among the numerous tools is questionnaires. Remember, questionnaire is not the only tool. Composing a questionnaire is like painting a picture. It needs supporting knowledge, time, and a careful process of designing, plus a good implementation. Questionnaire depends on both the concept and the research goal. Let's discuss them. Quite a lot of questionnaires are designed under vague objectives. It is difficult to compose good questionnaires if the objective is not clear. Taking a good definition, for instance, is insufficient for questionnaire design. Questionnaire design is like digging into the crust of the earth. It is hard, and the deeper we got in, the more difficulty to understand the goal. Come on, let's see an example. The examples is Jakarta governor election in 2012. First of all, it is an indirect survey asking popularity and performance of Foke. It is not measuring the real choice or preferences. Secondly, at the same time, a social media popularity measurement without a direct interview already showed the opposite. But LSE didn't amend the survey method. Third, the work of the promotion teams were changing people's opinions. Thus, there are some flaws in the research, but LSE didn't even try to correct their work. As we all know, that election is about the hope of the voters, connected to the candidate's portfolio. This is the basic concept of an election which should be translated into questionnaires. Voter communities catch the hope and candidate's portfolio, and the communities influence other people. The effectiveness of influence should be measured in the questionnaires. However, there is another decisive factor in winning voters: authentic campaign. An authentic campaign cannot be measured because of its dynamic. Let's see another example. In the example of translating concept number 1, if we confront a professional designer as an owner, the designer will react professionally. If we are wrong, the designer will explain. If we are right but the idea couldn't be implemented, the designer will explain. If we are right, the designer will accept. Could you ask respondents to help you design your beauty parlor? The answer is clear: no. Let's discuss another example. Is my beauty parlor clean? There are quite a lot of cleanliness criteria. The highest in pharmaceuticals laboratories and one of the lowest is street cleanliness. We can ask our own staff to inspect the cleanliness. We can also inspect it by ourselves. If we ask our customers, the results will be chaotic because our customers are not the cleanliness superintendents. Okay, then, how to do it? It depends on the research object. Now, let's see another example. A researcher wants to measure student satisfaction. First, the variables should elaborate it from concept down to dimension or vectors, subdimensions, and to variables. How we can do that? We can borrow concepts, dimensions, subdimensions, and variables from other researchers. That's why we have a library. Then, a set of variables should be defined as the main components of student satisfaction. Most of the time, we have to choose some variables and leave some others. There is no guarantee that the chosen variables will reflect student satisfaction after we run the survey and calculated the results. So here are the list of questions that you should ask. Which variable should be combined to measure satisfaction? What are the statistical requirements? Sample sufficiency after cross-tabulation, and which one should be valid, which one should be invalid? Is student the most important subgroup or the tutors? What if the student didn't prepare or they didn't have co-responsibility? What is your hypothesis? What is your reference group? And which variable to measure the difference? Which variable will be redundant? Okay then, in the next part, I will explain to you about the understanding the response process. Thank you for now. See you in the next part. Bye-bye.